following program on Other Derana 24 is classified for general audience. It is intended for all ages. It contains little or no violence, no strong language, and little or no sexual dialogue or situations.
Tonight, we discuss the fundamentals of outer space law. What key legislatures govern this complicated and vast field? A very good evening and thank you for joining us on yet another episode of Law, Land and Liberty, where we bring to you key legal concepts and break it down for the layman. Today's topic is something that in hindsight we should have breached further earlier, but I guess it really did slip our academic portfolio because we haven't really touched on it at all. But today we have someone that is very well versed to give us the best foundational and fundamental understanding of it, and that's on outer space law. To speak about this, we have someone that's a very prominent figure in this field as well, Dr.Dan, Malika, Gunasekara, attorney at law. Doctor, thank you so much for coming down to the studio. It's a very vast area of law and it's very international as well. So thank you for trying to attempt to break it down for the viewers here today.
Good evening, Anuradi. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thanks
and
again.
It's a different topic actually, because I used to speak on maritime law and law of the sea, but today it's on another very important topic that I feel comfortable.
Yes, all right. Thanks again, Doctor. And as he mentioned as well, Dr. Dan Malika is a prominent figure in the field of maritime law, but specifically he has had lots of research done on the outer space law aspects as well. So safe to say we're in very good hands when it comes to explaining and breaking down the basics. So here's how we're going to approach this topic. First, we'll be talking about the fundamentals, where the legislation lies, where the legislature is, how it is when it comes to cross-continental and cross-boundary issues. And then we'll be talking about the contemporary issues and the current context. Finally, we'll be talking about what we can expect as future developments when it comes to the development of not just spacefaring, but also about the law relating to outer space.
Hello, my name is Tismi Ayansa and I am a student in Gautami Balika Vidyalaya. So my question is on fundamental. What legislation are relevant for outer space law?
And without much further ado, let's get right into the discussion. Now, before we get into the topic at hand, once again, Doctor, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to come down to the studio. Before we do any of the breaking down and the discussions, can you tell us specifically why? Now, considering the fact that you're a prominent figure in the maritime law field, how exactly your experience relates to the laws relating to outer space? What exactly is your expertise in that area?
Yes, that's, I think, a very important question, because in Sri Lanka, of course, we do not have a proper scope to study the sophisticated areas of law, and especially outer space law. And as we know, even the maritime law of the sea, it's very, very limited that people can learn about. So when it comes to outer space law or space law in general, it's very hard to learn in this part of the world. So I happen to master the subject of outer space when I was doing my Master of Laws in International Law, because at University of Utrecht in the Netherlands, where I did my dissertation on the commercialization of outer space activities and the law relating to such commercialization. So that is how it all started, and it was in fact a very new subject for me also. And for a moment I was thinking, after I completed my dissertation for the master's, whether to go into the next level of PhD in space law. But then I happened to visit very famous leading universities in the Netherlands, like the Leiden University, where they could offer me a PhD position to further my enthusiasm in outer space law. But however, I thought for a moment that by the time I grow up the area would still not be developed. So then, in fact, I was invited to Germany on a scholarship to do my PhD in maritime law. So I happened to deviate from the subject of outer space law. But this is a very important and very interesting topic, especially for the developed world, and not only for the developed world, also for the developing world, because whether you are spacefaring or non-spacefaring, still the subject of outer space law would be very important for you, because there are a lot of areas that are connected to space law. It's not just spacefaring, but also with regard to the use of satellite, then what we call the remote sensing of how to analyze things that happen in the world, and then on now the artificial intelligence things are coming on. So all these things, telecommunication, all these things are interconnected, and the main area is the space law that all start with.
Exactly. Doctor, I think that's a very good segue for us to get into what I want to ask you first and foremost, to get it out of the way. What exactly defines outer space law? What is outer space law? And specifically, why has it become an important aspect when it comes to international context as well? Now, you mentioned just a little bit of a glimpse of how exactly outer space law is connected to everything. Can you walk us through a little bit of what the outer space law consists of and why it's important in international?
Yeah, true, Radhi. Actually, when it comes to national sovereignty, we know that every country has its own territorial sovereignty of land, number one. Then there is a sea sovereignty that spans to about 12 nautical miles of territorial sea, where that particular country has a sea area. If it is a coastal state, of course, then there is a sea sovereignty as well. Then the air sovereignty. So for the air sovereignty, there's air law that applies with regard to use of aircrafts and so forth in the airspace. But beyond beyond the airspace, no country has any kind of sovereignty to the space, outer space, that above that particular country's land or sea. Basically, the definition of outer space is the area that is beyond maybe 90 to 100 kilometers. There is no specific denomination of at the actual entitlement for a state to proclaim what their airspace is, but the airspace does expand to about 90 kilometers, and beyond that it's outer space. So whatever beyond 90 kilometers is outer space.
Exactly. And now to get to the key pieces of legislation, as you have very aptly described, there's a very vast area that can be considered under the territory of outer space law, specifically relating to one of the key pieces of legislation that we have seen, which is the Constitution of Space, as it's colloquially referred to, the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. Can you tell us, Doctor, if the Outer Space Treaty of 1967 is, the key principles of it, how exactly does it shape the activities that are going on today, or is it an out-of-date piece of legislation?
Before I venture into your question, I think I need to educate on how it all started, because immediately after the Second World War, then there was a virtual battle between the Soviet Union and the United States for the faring of outer space. And in 1957, the then US President Eisenhower made a clear expression that the outer space needs to be a free area that is out of any kind of war or war-related activities, and it has to be a peaceful area in general. And then the organizations such as the NASA in US, and then the European Space Agency, the ESA, they started to do exploration of the space, and then to visit the space and like that. And then Soviet Union, they sent the first space shuttle, the Sputnik, I think around 1957. Then in 1958 there was the Explorer one by the US. So there was a virtual kind of a war between the superpowers, the then superpowers, and that all erupted in bringing international legislation. So when it comes to international legislation, it all started with the international law. The principles of space law can be found in international law. They all started with the rules of international law. Then the international law developed to an extent to bring in the treaties such as the Outer Space Treaty 1967, then the Rescue Agreement 1968. I will explain all these things. Then Liability Convention in 1972, and then Registration Convention of 1976, followed by the Moon Treaty. So when we are right now in 2025 and looking back to the time that these international treaties were created, it feels like it's quite outdated now. And we need to modernize the area of outer space. And there are a lot of activities that have taken place in the post-1950s, 1960 era in coping with such development. The law has to be very tailor-made to combat and to address the issues that are pertaining to outer space. So I think, for the moment, to answer your question, the Outer Space Treaty of 1967 is a quite outdated legislation. And the general principle there is that, as I told you, in international law, the recognition is that every state has its own territorial sovereignty, whether it is the land or the sea or the air. But here, the main principles are that the outer space needs to be of no state sovereignty proclamation or acquiring of space by a state for its national sovereignty, and then also to make the space free of any war-like situation. So it has to be very peaceful situation. And thirdly, the resources and the scientific research has to be all shared between states, whether it's seafaring, whether it's spacefaring or non-spacefaring, whether it is a country that is developed or not. The main idea is to share.
I actually want to get into that aspect as well. I think maybe later on in the program we can discuss as to what can be done when it comes to the current status quo of space exploration and also space legislation. But before we get into the specifics relating to what kind of other legislation is there and what we can expect as global cooperation when it comes to the exploration of outer space and the legislation that pertains to that, let's take a very short commercial break. You're watching Law, Land and Liberty. We'll be right back after this. Stay tuned.
Dehami Uttara and I'm a student in St. Sebastian's Convent. My question is on the current context. What are the latest developments in outer space law?
Welcome back to Law, Land and Liberty. We're in conversation with Dr.Dan, Malika, Gunasekara, attorney at law, relating to outer space law. And we just got a bit of an introduction into the fundamentals or the foundational understanding of outer space law and what it consists of. Now, Doctor, once again, thank you for the previous segment. I believe it's time for us to get to the current and contemporary developments that we have seen over the past few years as well, specifically when it comes to the technological advancements that have taken place, not just in the space field, but in general as well. I want to ask you, relating to space exploration, the commercialization of space exploration is something that has occurred very drastically over the past few years. You mentioned, of course, the space race began with, the Soviet Union and America trying to compete for the exploration and who comes first and whatnot. But now it's not governments anymore. It's mostly relating to private companies. So how exactly has outer space law addressed, or international law, does it address adequately the role of private entities in exploring outer space?
Actually, when it comes to the national setup, states have to adopt the international laws that have been developed and also to modify them and bring national legislations in place in order to give its governmental or private organizations to handle and deal with the space-related activities. Now, when we say space-related activities, not every country is keen to explore space, right? I mean, only very few countries, especially like I told you, the NASA and the ESA are keen to explore space by sending the space shuttles to the various orbits or to the other planets, especially like the moon and so forth. But however, when it comes to the resources that we could explore from space, number one is telecommunication. Number one is telecommunication, because all the other related areas like the artificial intelligence or internet, whatever it is, that we use the satellites nowadays for various things. It is the International Telecommunication Union, the ITU, as an international organization that have come forward to provide these organizations the competence to deal with the various subject matters. So in that sense, the use of satellites is one of the main areas of commercialization of space activities. How satellites could be placed in the orbits, and with regard to its registration, with regard to the liability, especially to prevent accidents between each other, and also to minimize the space debris. So these are things that even at national level, the laws have to be developed. And it is very seldom that countries have enacted their own national pieces of legislations right now. So it is mainly the international laws that they are more dependent on. But with time, these have to be looked into. And we know that even agriculture could be made use of in a way that the space-related things could benefit agriculture industry, like for example the remote sensing, where from the satellites you can see if there is any kind of diseases that take place in the agriculture sector, and then what are the remedies that you need to apply in order to protect the industry, the agricultural industry. So remote sensing is very important in that aspect. So for these kinds of things, then the national laws have to be developed to suit in a way that states could use or take the maximum use of the commercialization of the space activities.
Exactly. And Doctor, there's always this question that I have when it comes to the penalties aspect as well. Now, you mentioned that there is not as much collaboration as one would expect from nations in order to ensure that there is a common international law that can be addressed across nations, whether it be spacefaring or not. I want to ask you, relating to the penalties aspect, what exactly are the repercussions or maybe the systems or procedures that are in place when it comes to, you know, the construction of satellite mega constellations or even space mining of asteroids, because we've had that conversation come up in recent times as well. Is there legislation for that right now, or are we still playing it blind?
As I told you at the beginning, outer space is an area that does not belong to a national sovereignty. You know, it is an area what we call in law as res nullius, but it is a res extra commercium, where commercial activities can take place, but nobody can, you know, no country can acquire or appropriate the area of outer space for its national sovereignty. So when it comes to activities of commercial nature, like you said, like mining, it is important that the countries that do take measures for such activities share the scientific data and the other relevant areas for the interest of the other states on their requests. So this is why the outer space is still not being up for any kind of sale for a country. You know, it's for what we call for the common heritage of mankind, which is, for example, like the moon is a common heritage of mankind. So the other areas of outer space is for the use of all states. It's not for any country to acquire. So this is where, you know, you can't bring in national legislations to make laws with regard to those areas. But of course, when it comes to the operations at territorial areas of land, then you can regulate, but then all such laws needs to be adopted as national laws, but that would give access to the various commercial activities at space. But fundamentally, we need to know that whatever, like for example, you said the space mining cannot take place in the present context of the international law, because even the outer space law, the Outer Space Treaty 1967 does not specifically grant such entitlement for any states, because it is for the common usage of the humankind. But what is important there is that, you know, that in the past, in the 1967 convention, they more focus on peaceful purposes of use. It is not for other commercial usage. It was more concentrated on non-use of military activities, especially for no use of weapons of mass destruction. Even it is very silent on whether conventional type of weapons can be used in outer space. But however, there are things that we need to develop at international level, first of all, before the laws come into place at national level.
Doctor, now this is a question that comes up very, I guess, when it comes to just the process of thinking of it all as well, because we've seen through history how the development of space exploration and the legislation relating to it has occurred. And now we're in the current context where lots of other nations, it's not just, the Soviets and the US, but more, countries across the globe, China, India, other global players that have already, Europe is also still hanging on. Is there any fears of a reignition of another space race that could happen, specifically considering the fact that now private entities have also entered the game? Do we see a climate in which we will be fostering unknowingly a new space race where all our resources can be put into focus just specifically to reach outer space and have more developments in that aspect? Or do you think that the international law that's already in place puts a little bit of a shackle on it right now? What are your thoughts, Doctor?
Definitely, Anuradhi, because things have already started to evolve. Right. Now, when it comes to space tourism, there are private organizations that are trying to promote the space operations, the space tourism areas, and people are interested, people are keen in investing in going to outer space to see what it is, that it is one area. And then there are so many other areas like the countries that are in the race when it comes to the satellite operations. They place in orbits various kinds of satellites, and these are regulated by the International Telecommunication Organization or Union. But so in that context, I don't think that we need to revisit the international law as it was, but because the International Telecommunication Union, for example, is doing a lot of work in that areas of radio frequencies and then placing of satellites, the registration process of satellites, those kinds of things. Only thing is that the International Telecommunication Union will have to focus more on how the space race happening between the states and to facilitate the countries with more opportunities so that they can go into spacefaring in that particular area. But when it comes to exploration of space activities, it's a different thing, because not every country is eligible to do that. I mean, okay, China will do, USA, Russia, the European Space Agency will do, the NASA will do, only very few. But other countries, especially the underdeveloped countries, they are incapable of doing. So what we need to do is to create a mechanism where even the underdeveloped world could participate in a participatory level to get engaged in spacefaring. And they also needs to venture into this. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I don't think that, I mean, if you take Sri Lanka, for example, Sri Lanka is interested at all. I don't think, because we have sent the Ravana, the satellite, to the space, and beyond that, it might take few years for us to go into the next steps. But likewise, I said this sharing of the know-how are very important. For that, we need to go to develop the law also to go hand in hand.
Exactly. I want to talk about Sri Lanka's context, just as you mentioned as well. Now, we don't really have much of a conversation relating to outer space. We have to figure out what's on the ground first. But we also have to get into the future expectations and the challenges that we can see pop up when it comes to governing this area, this vast area that is outer space law. So before we speak about any of those specifics, let's take a very short commercial break once again. You're watching Law, Land and Liberty. We'll be right back with the final segment.
is Simadhya Sidney and I am a student in Gautami Balika Vidyalaya, Colombo. So my question is, on the future, how can we expect legislation around this subject to develop?
Welcome back to Law, Land and Liberty. We're in our final segment in conversation with Dr.Dan, Malika, Gunasekara relating to outer space law. Thank you very much, Doctor, for the previous two segments. There was a lot of understanding. Despite the vastness of this subject area, there is some understanding that we can garner through the previous two segments that we have had a discussion on. Now I want to direct, you very rightly mentioned that Sri Lanka's context is quite different to the rest of the world. Can you tell us, in your opinion, where exactly Sri Lanka stands when it comes to national space policy or legislation? Do we have any laws that have been enacted or are being, supportive when it comes to governing our satellites or space activities, or are we at a loss completely when it comes to legislation relating to outer space?
It is very timely. The topic, of course, is very timely what you ask, Anuradhi, because space law is a very complex, sophisticated area that we don't talk much in the national setup. Even in the international setup, we don't talk much. But, in the United Nations, there is a special committee, and the other high-level meetings take place at multilateral level to develop the area of outer space law. But if I'm to, explain the article by article in the relevant conventions, it will be too much of a hassle for this for the viewers and people who don't know. So I'm trying to make it very simpler for the people to understand what outer space law is. It's not like the general land law, for example, or any other law that you may discuss in these programs. It's something that our human mind can't grasp at once. There's a lot of sophistications, a lot of complexities that are surrounded here. So we have to be very, very basic at this level. Not only for Sri Lanka, but for many countries, even in the developed world, people don't talk much about space law. That is because the area is too vast and like the space, difficult to explain in short. So what really we need to focus is to bring in good policies at national level, because here in our country we are talking much about the use of the activities that are connected to the space, like the internet or the telecommunication, the other radio frequencies and all kinds of things, including the remote sensing or artificial intelligence, for example. But we do not have a policy to regulate the use of space, outer space. That is because, we are a non-space-faring nation, right? But there will be a time that comes to us to go into that area, venture into that area, harness what space bring for us as a country that is eager to develop. So there are a lot to develop. Not only the national legislations, but also the policy, and then technologically we have to do a lot in the area of outer space. So unless we do all these things, one in line with the other, I don't think that it's even proper to talk about. So what I can tell is that it's better to get ready rather than being not ready for the future. So at least now we could have a policy, as you said, formulate a policy. So from time to time, when we go on, we can bring in the national legislations to fill up those areas. So start with the policy, and then we can go into national legislations, how we are going to make use of the outer space and how we develop the outer space law, so that we as a country, we as people, we as organizations, governmental or non-governmental, could basically get into the actions in our country.
Exactly. I think what you mentioned is very right as well. We have to work from the ground up in order to maintain our already existing processes, and then we can think about maybe the legislative process for beyond our grounds, which is outer space. I want to ask you specifically, Doctor, relating to the future of what we can see when it comes to regulating space activity regionally. In your experience, or with what you have read and what you have understood, when it comes to the regional context, is there proper conversation going around relating to outer space law and its regulation of the current airspace, for example, the Asia region? Do we see communication in that sense, or is it completely dispersed? How is it looking, Doctor?
I would say that it is very remote at the moment, right? There are discussions that take place. Very few discussions take place at international, regional level, in regional organizations. Like, for example, if we take SAARC or BIMSTEC or other regional the organizations, these discussions take place plenary in sessions. But I think there has to be further steps. You need to go into much bigger discussions, so that as a region, then we can plan out, we can do a lot as a region. We can develop, we can advance into the very specific areas of how we can harness the benefits out of the outer space and make use of for all the countries, especially when it comes to nowadays keeping the outer space peaceful without any military type of activities, or especially not to have activities of mass destructions or weapons of mass destructions. So at least for that we can bring in, because for example, even the ballistic missile passes the outer space when it lands. So when it is projected and lands, it passes the outer space. So therefore, there is military presence by the use of ballistic missiles. So these are things that we have to concentrate as a region, because we don't know when our region will be attacked, right? There could be a war. So now in our region also, we do have escalating conflicts between India and Pakistan, for example. So we need to be very preemptive in looking at these areas at regional level. So it's a very good question that you pose, Anuradhi. We need to, as a region, we need to focus on these things.
Exactly. And Doctor, we are slowly coming to time onto the duration of this discussion as well. But before we end it off, I want to ask you specifically relating to, now of course, regionally, as you mentioned, there needs to be more dialogue, there needs to be more communication. But when it comes to the aspects of, for example, now serious issues such as space junk that's collecting, now it could be a certain nation that has launched it into space, but then it's accumulating in a different region of space. Does international law cover this kind of area adequately? Do we see a lot of conversation?
No, as I told you, the 1967 Outer Space Treaty is well outdated, and it does not cover this area of space debris and the junk that prevail in the outer space, and also it lacks laws in preventing or imposing liability for space accidents. accidents between space objects. So these are things that now the United Nations has to focus and bring in international treaties to combat, because we see on a daily basis now the space objects that are sent to the outer space, like in many ways the satellites, and they become innocuous, non-operative, and after some time they break up into debris, and in the outer space, even though we don't see, there's a lot of debris. And those days we used to count the stars, but now we can count many stars. That is because they are not stars, but they are debris. Small things that we see like stars are not real stars. They are space debris. So we can see at the outer space is just junk, and we see this on land, we see this at sea, and now we are going to see this in space. So that is why not only at regional level but at global level we have to address this and try to bring it to a control level. Otherwise the outer space will look like a kind of a carnival in the future.
Exactly, Doctor. I mean, we might have landfills in space, and that's why this conversation is very important, specifically relating to what we can expect to see as developments moving forward as well. Doctor, now with all the research and experience you have had in this field specifically, can you tell us if the world right now is heading in the right direction when it comes to the communication relating to legislation for outer space? Are we having a healthy dialogue? Maybe we don't see anything enacted as of yet, but are we heading in the right direction when it comes to initiating space policy or outer space law, not just for spacefaring nations, but all nations? What's your take on that, Doctor?
It is mainly the United Nations, because the United Nations has a special committee to work on the outer space. And I would like to place a special note here that there was a Sri Lankan legal expert who used to serve in the United Nations Outer Space Office, Dr. Nandasiri Jaswantiliana. He was a very leading Sri Lankan legal expert in outer space. He was working in the United Nations, so I should place tribute to him, because I think he's now retired and don't know whether he's living in Sri Lanka or abroad, but he has written literature on the subject, and I happened to also visit him during my study period when I studied on outer space law, and I have met him in Sri Lanka when he launched a book also, and so likewise we need to bring in the specializations in this area, and UN is the best place to do this, because they have this special unit, the special committee to look into outer space activities, and that should be the starting. It is the starting point actually, but it has to be furthered. Furtherance is very important. So what I see is that the development, the advancement is quite low. We have to accelerate because of the various issues that we are facing. It's not only the spacefaring, as you mentioned, but without sparing space, there are a lot of issues that are coming up related to space, like we discussed about the space debris, then about the work of other things related to satellite and use of radio frequencies. So we need to activate all these things and move forward.
All right, and that's all the time we have for you today on this program. Doctor, thank you so much for coming down to the studio and to explaining this very vast concept as best as possible to our viewers. I believe our viewers can take quite a bit of information from this conversation. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me, and I hope that the discussion was very fruitful, and we could see that Sri Lanka as a nation takes very important steps in the field of outer space law. Thank you.
And we leave you tonight with the words of Chinese philosopher Zhuangzi. For the wise man looks into space and he knows there is no limited dimensions. That's all we have for you on Law, Land and Liberty. If you had missed any of our programs, you can always rewatch by catching us on our YouTube page, youtube.com/otherthanenglish. And please do share your thoughts and feedback with us through email at feedback.ad24english@derana.lk or via WhatsApp at 076 805 7933. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good night.